Hey everyone, welcome to this video. Today I want to talk about how I make my worlds in Unity, or my pipeline of creating my levels in Unity. And this will be a short one, I think, because it's actually quite simple, and I feel like this pipeline works well for my game. It might not work that well for other types, but I kind of want to go into how you could use this approach for your own game, and where it's kind of a good idea to follow this, where you can maybe adjust something and where you should just, do something different. Because obviously it's going to change depending on what game you're making. So I start my process of creating a level in Blender. That's where I basically start all my 3D needs, because it's a free, very, very potent, very, very good program that I can only recommend if you haven't gotten into it yet. So if you want to do anything 3D related, my advice would always be Blender. And I start my level design phase by blocking out rough shapes in Blender, very geometric. That is because my level design in the end is also going to look very geometric. So I have only 90-degree angles and very specific heights for the individual levels of the level. So for the individual platforms, let's call them. And so I can make this very rough shape that's already kind of really well showing the dimensions of the level itself, even if it's, if there's nothing in the end, it's just the basic shapes. But I already have an idea of, the scale of the level, where stuff could go, where, enemies might be, where buildings could be. So you get a very, close idea of what it's going to look like very quickly, which is very, I like that a lot. That's something I like about making games in general, is that you get a very quick feedback on your work very quickly. You don't need to work on something for a couple of days until you see a result or something. You can, mock something up in Blender in like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then you can basically play it already. That is really cool with this approach. And also you can just keep that blend file after you exported your basic shape into Unity and go back into it and change stuff very quickly, very easily, because obviously level design is, you're going to want to change stuff quickly and often most of the time, unless you are like a very expert game developer and every choice you make is the right one from the start. But that's probably not going to be the case. You're probably going to make some mistakes, or just find something out later that you weren't aware of in the beginning. So you will start making a level and realize while playing it that some, choice might not have been the best, that the player can't see something that's important, that the player doesn't find the way, or that something is too big, too small, whatever. So this approach of, mocking up this basic shape in Blender really gives you the opportunity to go back in and change it. It is very non-destructive and very simple, it's very easy. So I make this basic shape, I put it into Unity, just export it as an FBX. You can also import your blend files into Unity and use that directly. The issue with that is that it's taking up much more space than an exported FBX. So please only do this while developing, and use exported FBX files when you're shipping your game, because it's inflating your project size like quite rapidly. I think blend files are like 4 times, or sometimes, depending on your size and the amount of objects, like 10 times the size of an exported file. So it's really good to not keep your blend files in your project just because of the convenience that, they update automatically. That is cool, but it's just inflating your size. It's like keeping PSD files in your project. That is also a very bad idea. Not while developing. When you finish developing, then you should get rid of all of that. And so now I have this, basic shape in Unity. I can already pull it in and, put some basic colliders in. which is, you know, quite easy because we're only using right angles, which is I didn't do that because of the colliders, but it is like a nice side effect that you don't really have to worry about making colliders for complex shapes, which is always a pain. There are a few different approaches to, you know, making colliders for a more complex shape. You could do a simplified version of that mesh and put a mesh collider on it, but you know, we know that mesh colliders are performance-wise the worst option, so don't do that. If you have another option, you could build a shape out of basic colliders. That is what I mostly do, but that looks horrible and I don't like it. So this version is pretty much the easiest or best thing you can do in this case, because it's just right angles. I can just use, you know, primitive colliders, and we can play that really easily without having to, you know, make colliders for 2 hours straight. And we can walk around in it and kind of get a feel for the level itself, already change stuff, you know, put it back in with some changed stuff. And then it's time to make some walls and make some floor textures. And that is also quite easy. I came up with this modular wall system that allows you to basically easily change the wall type, because the walls we imported from Blender are just, you know, flat planes, and I wanted more of a fancy wall type. I'm kind of getting inspired by old Zelda games here. So we want more like different wall types, and I want to be able to also alternate between them and exchange them quite quickly, and make different versions for different scenes that are also interconnectable if I want them to. So I made this modular wall system with like a straight piece and an edge piece and an in-edge piece that can just be fitted together. They mostly fit. Sometimes they don't do 100% perfectly, but the player is never going to see it, and you just kind of have to get over your own perfectionism at that point and be like, yeah, that's overlapping like 0.01 millimeters. That's fine. It's sometimes hard for me to acknowledge that that's fine, but that's totally okay. So we put all the walls on. That takes a while, but it's, you know, it's also non-destructive, and you won't really find a way that's quicker. It's just some labor that you'll have to do, or that I have to do in this case. And then we paint some floors on. That is done, in my case, with a vertex color shader. So you do need to subdivide your mesh for that a little bit. Otherwise it's not going to work, because you're actually painting on the vertices of the mesh themselves, and the shader is then converting that to one of two textures that you know, we've imported or implemented. So that is the way I make a very basic level, and then it's time to, you know, put props in, and grass and mountains and buildings and so on, and you have a finished level. So that is pretty much how I go about it. It's, I think for me right now, the best workflow I've come up, because it's modular, it is non-destructive. I can always go back into that blend file, or if I don't have it anymore, I can go back into the FBX file and just change it in a very short amount of time. You don't have to worry about, you know, complex colliders. It's very easy to make some, you know, simple colliders for that, and it allows me to have a lot of freedom with you know, the level design. Obviously it is limited, you know, we have those very hard right angles, and we're limited by that pretty simple, you know, level structure, let's say it. If you wanted something that is more organic, obviously you could do a little bit of rounded edges. That wouldn't be a problem, and you could do like slides or like angled walls. That would be fine. But as soon as you want something that's much more organic, I would you know, advise you to not go with this approach of making a mesh in another software and then importing it, because making colliders for that would be an absolute pain. I would just advise going with a some sort of terrain solution, like Unity's standard terrain, or a different terrain solution, because those terrain colliders will be a lot more optimized than just dealing with I don't know, some sort of primitive collider solution, or making a mesh collider for a terrain, which would be also a very bad idea. Yeah, so this is about it. That's how I go about making basic levels. And if you have any questions about it, if you have any ideas of improvement, please let me know them in the comments. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video then. Until then, have a good time. Bye bye.